We're live. We're both in motion. So
hopefully.
We'll see how long this holds. We are coming to you live from really interesting locations in our homes because we're trying to get close to our Wi-Fi.
Truly the lengths we're going to, they're not really great lengths, but also the persistence. Like we're gonna keep trying until we make this thing work. It's gonna happen.
Yes, so we're very committed to Sparkle Motion. So we are here today to talk about episode 5. Yes, we shall. Episode 5, Journey into Mystery. So, as we saw at the end of the last episode, freshly pruned Loki wakes up surrounded by other Lokis, urging him to get up and come with them to hide from a giant cloud monster who the other Lokis explain is named Eliath. Now I'm like doubting myself a lot. Okay. And Eliath feeds on living matter, destroying everything that winds up in this place, the void. The Lokis hide out in an underground bunker where Kid Loki is king because his Nexus event was killing Thor. I mean, probably other reasons too. But the essential thing here is that the TVA has pruned a lot of Lokis, and Lokis are survivors. And so there are a lot of pruned Lokis, not just these 4, now 5. But it takes our Loki, main character Loki, about 30 seconds in the presence of other versions of himself to feel really embarrassed and just like over it. He wants to get back to the TVA to help Sylvie. And the other Lokis are like, I don't know why you think you're so special that like you'll make it. Like we haven't tried to get out of here. And Loki explains that like he is not special. He is just like the rest of this band of assholes. But Sylvie is special. We also learn that in this vast land of Lokis, a character who is allegedly canonically gender fluid per a stupid fucking graphic in the end credits, for all the Lokis that they have seen, they've always been men. So that's really cool. Thank you for that, Marvel.
We can always count on you.
To do the least, to do the absolute least. Anyway, as Loki goes to storm out of the bunker, they're greeted by a bunch of other Lokis led by Vote Loki, who appeared in the teasers and is the only other Loki that is played by Tom Hiddleston. Vote Loki has come with a small army of Lokis to take over Kid Loki's bunker because Boastful Loki sold them out. Boastful Loki did this so that he could be king, but of course, Vote Loki immediately double crosses Boastful Loki before Vote Loki in turn gets like betrayed by his whole army of Lokis. So it's a lot of Lokis to keep track of here. I'm doing my best. Fighting ensues. Main character Loki is like more embarrassed than ever.
Like the worst kind of family reunion where you're like, oh my God.
But while he's like in a corner cringing, classic Loki casts like this projection and like helps the original group of Lokis minus Boastful Loki escape. Meanwhile, at the TVA, Renslayer explains to Sylvie that she also just found out about the like animatronic timekeepers, so she doesn't know who is behind all of this. And also, Renslayer tells Sylvie that when people and things get pruned, they go to a place called the Void, which is a place at the end of the timeline, out in the part of the timeline that the timekeepers haven't written yet. Sylvie concludes, for magic time reasons, that the creators of the TVA, the actual people pulling the strings, must be, or like are probably hiding in a part of the timeline beyond the Void. Renslayer tries to convince Sylvie that they should work together because Renslayer can help Sylvie find Loki, and they have a shared goal of wanting to like figure out who created the TVA. Renslayer, of course, turns on Sylvie. Outmatched and determined to like follow her new hunch, Sylvie prunes herself. It's great because all the time cops are just standing there looking at each other like, oh, okay. We've never seen that one. So when Sylvie arrives in the Void and like immediately has to flee Alioth, the big cloud monster. She like briefly has a flash of her like enchantress vision connection thing. She's rescued by the arrival of a pizza car driven by Mobius, who is alive and well. They briefly consider looking for Loki, but Sylvie's like, truly, I don't know that if he's alive, and like, I gotta get past the cloud monster, and like, I have a plan. So let's go back to the cloud monster. And Mobius doesn't like this plan, but also doesn't protest, even though he's the one driving. And like, really, I don't know, he can kind of do whatever he wants, but he listens to her, and they turn around to drive back to the cloud monster. Back at the TVA, Renslayer, I have no idea if I'm actually doing these things in the correct sequence, to be honest with you. Back at the TVA, Renslayer goes, like, when do we cut back and forth? I don't actually remember. But back at the TVA, Renslayer goes to interrogate Hunter B-15, who is also alive, much to my genuine surprise, to get insight into Sylvie. And the main thing that B-15 says is that Renslayer is going to lose because she merely wants to know the truth while Sylvie needs it. Back in the Void Lokis lament how broken and shitty they are and how they always betray everyone. And even if a Loki does try to like be better, he gets pruned. I glossed over it, but like classic Loki tells like a really sad story about how he just like hid out and was alone forever, and then finally he's like, Jesus, I'm so lonely, and that was when he got pruned.
Yes. I miss my brother specifically.
I miss my brother, and then he got pruned. It was so sad. Yes. But anyway, so it's all an exercise in futility. Main character Loki is like, yes, this all sucks, but anyway, I'm gonna go stab the cloud monster. The Void Lokis think that this is a ridiculous plan, but they agree to help him anyway. Not like go with him, but at least help him get there. As they are strategizing possible paths to get close enough to the cloud monster to like stab it without getting vaporized, I guess, Mobius and Sylvie roll up. Sylvie is like, wow, stabbing it is a terrible fucking plan. My plan is to enchant it because I'm like 95% sure that I can. And also I am pretty sure the cloud monster is really just some sort of guard dog for whoever created the TVA. And also I'm the smartest one here and we all know it. So they decide to go with Sylvie's plan. There's a funny, like, cute little scene with Mobius and the Void Lokis debating whether or not Alligator Loki is a real Loki. And then there's an uncomfortable scene with Loki and Sylvie where Loki wraps them up in a blanket, like big blanket that he conjures, even though the thing that Sylvie actually asked for was a new fucking outfit. And he never gave her a new outfit. Why didn't he give her a new anyway? But also the other, like the significant thing in this bit is that Sylvie's like, are you gonna betray me? Because like that's your thing, isn't it? And Loki like explains that he has been a really bad person and he feels really shitty about it. And that like he wants her to trust him now because like he earnestly would like to be a better person. Anyway, it's time to do the thing. So Sylvie gives main character Loki the tempad, but he insists that he's going to stay with her. So he passes it off to the Void Lokis, who are like, no, we live here now. So they give it to Mobius, who is just going to go back to the TVA to fuck shit up. And Loki hugs Mobius goodbye, and it's very cute. In order to enchant Alioth, the cloud monster, Sylvie needs a diversion. So Loki runs away and starts like waving a flaming sword in the air, and it works for a little bit. Yeah, over here. It works for a little bit, but it is not enough. So then classic Loki straight up conjures all of Asgard, and it is very impressive. He gets vaporized for his trouble, but he's like laughing as he goes out. And Loki and Sylvie are like, wow, maybe we are in fact extremely powerful. And like, yes, like we have seen in this series, we've seen main character Loki do things on this show that we never saw him do in the MCU. Like that thing where he caught the building on the planet, on the exploding planet, that I feel like we have never seen him do something on that level. But anyway, Sylvie is like, yes, okay, you are going to help me do the enchanting because I know you can do it on account of how we are the same. I mean, I assume she taught herself this over many years of apocalypse hopping, but whatever, sure, they're the same. And with their powers combined, they successfully chant Alioth and walk into the finale, the end.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well done. You gotta ask me the thing.
Oh yeah, did you like it?
Thanks for asking. I thought you'd never ask. I did like it. I found that the pace of this one was better. Like it was, I don't know, on the same level as last episode. I feel like we didn't really get anywhere, like story wise. Like we didn't travel far, but there were enough like really cool details and interactions and cool set pieces and everything that I was like, I had fun watching it. I was hooked. The 40 or whatever, 45 minutes went by very quickly. And so in all, I feel like this was a good setup before the last episode. I feel like we have a lot to do in the last episode. There are a lot of things I want to know in the last episode, but I am content with the way that this one went. So yes, I liked it. Did you like it?
Yes, I also really liked it. I agree. I think the pacing of this one's really strong. And I think that like even for the ways that less like the last episode was really heavy in terms of like plot action. Like there was a lot of action and all of that. Like each bit was like plot meaningful in a way that this episode had a lot of action, but it was less plot shifting. However, it wasn't extraneous because it felt like it was feeding back into, there was a lot of action that was doing bigger thematic work. Even like when it wasn't doing plot work, it was sort of tying back into this whole sort of, the bigger question about whether or not people can change and identity and like the thing
work. Yeah.
Yes. Which is, as far as I can tell, the point of the whole show. So, so yes, I really loved all of this stuff. I think, and there were several moments with main character Loki, like watching all of the other versions of himself that the moment where I think it was the second time, like when they were all fighting and he just like has like head in hand is so embarrassed by the other versions of himself is like one of my top favorite comedic moments in the MCU. I love it so much.
My whole journey, well, maybe you don't know because our lives have been so cursed.
I know, but the
audience may not know. As the TVA has, deleted all of this from the internet. My big like thing coming into the show was that I'm like not a huge fan of the character Loki, and so this is like a very character focus on a character that I didn't like. And so I was very hesitant, but I think that I had moments in this episode that I was like, dang, they did it. They like won me over to this character. But specifically though, I think that they've done so many smart things in terms of like taking what was a villain. And even though a lot of people like this character, this actor, acknowledging like he's done bad things and taking this villain and then carving out a path where we can change our mind about him, and starting with this is a slightly different Loki than you even know. This is a different version, and there are all of these different versions of Loki. And hey, we're gonna make the big theme of the show, maybe people can change. And I'm like, dang it. Oh, you got me. You got me. Yes. And then having like Mobius be the one to deliver that line, even though it is a little bit on the nose, like, yeah, Mobius is like the character, that I, as a viewer, am more invested in. Like coming from him, I think it was to more effect than if like Loki were the one who said it. So that later in a scene where Loki kind of says something similar, or he's like, I'm like, yeah, you made your point.
You can change, I guess.
Yes. Which is to say that if Loki at all betrays anybody in the finale, I will be pissed. That is done. That ship has sailed. There's no more betrayal from main character Loki, or else I will be pissed.
Just like a tiny one, like a tiny betrayal.
No. Absolutely, not even a fake out betrayal. I don't want to see it.
I don't know that not even a fake out betrayal. That feels like That seems
We've
like
already had so many. We don't need it.
Well, we shall see. I just discovered last night that this is a series. This is not a mini series. That there's a second season that is already in development. What if he only betrays Loki? I mean, okay, but is alligator Loki not the best Loki? Like, I don't like that feels like the worst one he could betray.
I'm actually gonna say if it's only Loki Gator, I will accept the betrayal. Fine.
That's the one that is acceptable. Oh wait, they would undermine the whole show if they. Yes, I mean yes, that's fair.
Yeah.
Valid. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So I'm curious whether this, like, how much is actually going to get wrapped up in the finale, because it does feel like there's a lot left.
Yes.
In terms of, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we have to at least get to the answer of like who is behind the TVA. But then maybe it will be sort of a longer running thing to like actively dismantle it, or I don't know, or maybe they do, and then like the future seasons are just
more Lokis
in whatever new universe, whatever they create.
Disney. We
we're ready. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how that will shake out, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Let's see. Okay, well, we sort of like run down like lists of characters. I feel like this is just a list of the different Lokis. That's the character. Okay, wait. We'll go. Before we get into the Lokis, let's talk about like the handful of other little like character moments. What feelings on the Renslayer arc in this one? Her couple scenes.
So we were just talking about like betrayal or like fake out betrayals. And while watching this, I almost said this while we were saying that, but I was like, we'll get to Renslayer later. It kind of feels like Renslayer is doing the fake out betrayal thing right now. Like, I'm not entirely convinced she didn't know that by telling Sylvie about the pruning that wouldn't be like Sylvie's way out or whatever. I don't know. I kept flip-flopping between she's the one behind this all and no, she's like genuinely learning some part of this or interested in getting to the bottom of it as well. So I'm not entirely sure where her character is. I'm also like, this is not my favorite part of the show is watching her arc. It's just kind of whatever to me. It's a little flat. I don't care.
That's interesting. That had not like really occurred to me. It was more just like, I don't like the her whole conversation with Sylvie. Everything just happened so quickly that I was just like, Sylvie wouldn't like take you at your word here anyway. Like this whole thing is like a little bit weird to me. That's interesting though, because Renslayer has like made comments before about like the TV, like the timekeepers watching things. And so like the idea that she's behaving in a manner, like she's behaving like somebody who's being watched by whoever this is, and like making that be the sort of the central thing. I don't think she's behind everything because like they have her in a moment alone talking to Miss what's the clock's name?
Miss Minutes,
asking, whatever, telling her like they're in danger, so I need to find them. So like seems like she genuinely doesn't know, but who knows?
Yeah, the whole exchange too was a little bit just, as ridiculous as parts of this show are, that part was just kind of a little groan worthy.
Yes.
That Sylvie would let herself get caught in this trap or whatever, especially when Miss Minutes is like, right away, honey, I'm just looking through these files. Like, Sylvie, please. Please. So yeah, that was like, I don't know. It as much as like we are suspending disbelief for so many things here, that moment I was like, my Sylvie would never.
She would never. Yes, big agree. Yeah, just generally sort of disappointed. I'm also curious about like the Hunter B-15 still being alive and the realization that the show is going to be like an actual series. And so I'm sort of curious if like that scene was mostly just there to be like, she's still alive. Just so you know, if you
Yes.
thought that she got zapped, she did not.
No.
She is here. Although I guess the other thing too is like she's still here and Mobius is going back. So presumably the TVA side of things in the finale will be her and Mobius doing something, doing something at the TVA to take them down, I guess. So I guess Mobius, alive and well and driving a pizza car.
Love to see it. Mobius alive and well, driving a pizza car and getting to say his like goodbye to Loki. Like, we don't know what's going to happen or if their paths will cross again in the finale, because it feels to me like there's almost going to be two separate threads, right? You know, Mobius at the TVA and Loki and Sylvie doing whatever at the castle. But it was so nice. I mean, after we saw Loki wake up, I was like, okay, Mobius is still alive too, which is great. But then they got to have their little scene of goodbye. And I really love the way that this character has gone. I love his progression. I still want him to have his jet ski moments. Like, I'm in it. I'm in it for this character.
And it's, I mean, like you were saying earlier too, that Loki's friendship with Mobius is a big part of the way that like they are selling this version of the character. Like that is central to Loki's character development is yes. Watching this, you know, this friendship develop. And so Loki's little moment of like, get in here. Great, good. Yeah, the really the only thing that matters in the finale is that Mobius gets to be on a jet ski.
Oh yeah, and gets to be on a jet ski. But you know, we're talking about Mobius's friendship with Loki in the chat. There's a great point about how Mobius connects with all of the Lokis, like they just vibe with him. And I think part of what this, you know, another kind of on the nose line, but still, you know, it fit, was Loki saying that, or Sylvie says that Mobius isn't half bad. And Loki kind of says, well, he isn't all good either. And that's kind of why they connect, right? Is that the big thesis statement here is that nobody is all bad or all good, right? And so Mobius has a lot of that in his own character, and that's why they all vibe with the Loki. So all of that coming together, I was like, oh, okay. I like it.
At some point earlier on in the series, I no longer think that this is the case, but early on, like as they had their little like whatever budding friendship, I had this like one of my earliest hunches was that maybe Mobius was like a Thor variant, and that's like part of what was going on there. But like, sorry, I just completely. Really
where were you, on a jet ski? Just
in my mind. I've been laying tile, and when we're done with this, I'm going to go back to laying tile. So I have half a brain cell left for this conversation.
Well, to you know, go with your alternate Thor theory, Miriam says that Mobius is jet ski Loki. Which Excellent. Is even better than alligator Loki, if you ask me.
That's correct. Yes. The superior Loki is jet ski Loki. I am also extremely curious about Mobius's Nexus event.
There's 3 Nexus events that I'm like curious about. One is Mobius, one is like Sylvie's, because we see the moment that she's taken, but I don't know if they've said what her Nexus event is.
Right.
And then the other is the Nexus event that happens when Loki and Sylvie are together, when they're falling in love, which might just be them falling in love, Nicole.
No, stop it. No, stop it. I'm still holding out hope that there's something else going on there. Because I hate
After this
that.
episode,
I
still
know. I listen. The hope is thinner,
dwindling?
but I won't let it go.
Uh-huh.
That's all I'm gonna say. So I guess that's maybe another place to go. So this episode definitely dwindled my hope in that version of things. I didn't hate that scene as much as I like. If you had described that scene to me last week, I would have said thanks, I hate it. It was awkward to me, but like it's fine.
It's still
fine.
you're right. The reason that I'm like there is like dwindling but still hope is that in the moment all the language that they use is like what we were talking about, like friendship and connection that is like, I don't know, how would you connect with yourself, a different version of yourself? And obviously there are things that they keep sending us that are giving romantic signals, and they repeat the things, but also all of the language is about friendship. And then she has that line where she's like, you and I are the same. Do not sell, like, if you're going to sell me a romance, you're going to try and distance the idea that these are the same being as much as possible, not remind me over and over again that these are the same people. So I don't know.
all of Sylvia's half is 100% the reason that I'm not giving up hope, because her whole half of all of it did not in any way to me read as like romantic. This is a romantic thing. It was I have never had a friend because I like have been on the run my entire life, and I don't know how to have a friend. And so like that like those, that's her dialogue. She just has the line about like them being the same, just like all of that. It's still, and even Loki's half of it, that is where most of the like, is this a romantic thing energy is coming from, still feels like it could just be everything that you were saying in terms of like what, like how do you like, and just like being confused about like, I don't know what this sensation that I am experiencing right now is. I don't know what one would compare it to, because you're me.
Yes. But you're different. But you're me, but you're different. Like, is this a friend? And also, like, I think I trust you, and I've never trusted anybody before, and I've never had friends before. But are you a friend? Are you like a sibling? Are you me? Like all of that combined.
Yeah. Yes.
I love that. I love that idea that it would be like a weird thing to explore. And I'm still behind them kind of misdirecting us with the romance side of it, but I'm not as confident as I was last week. No. The thing too, I haven't watching these past few, like all of the episodes in all of the previous weeks, I've watched the episode and like got right on the live, like no time to process. Things have been really, really busy in the last month or so. But this one I finished with enough time that I was like, ooh, like, let me read what people like reactions and watch videos and whatever. So I did a bunch of that. And like I watched, like, if you Google Loki episode 5, like the 3 most popular videos that come up by men. Right? I watched those 3. And they're all like just talking about the romantic connection, like as if it's a given. Like, yeah, love it. This romance, this budding romance is great. And I'm like, is it a given? Is it a given? Or is it just men?
I mean, it's a great question. I don't know. It's the show. The show has a female director, and there are a number of moments where that is like very apparent. But the writer is a guy, so if it's just men, well. Men.
I mean, it could just be men interpreting too. Like maybe, or we're here like reading too much into it, and they're just like, kiss. I don't know.
Yes. Why lady in comic show if not for kiss?
Why together under blanket if not grope? Sorry.
Wait, maybe it's not so. Maybe I'm wrong about the writer. Okay, that's interesting. I don't feel like Googling it right now. So anyway, yeah, we're gonna find out next week, I guess. We will. Maybe they're just gonna keep stringing us along.
Yes.
I did see like an interview or something like to the effect that with I want to say it was Tom Hiddleston saying something that was like that this is that was like affirming the idea that this is like an actually like a romance, but also I don't trust any of that stuff. Like I don't like that. To me, that's meaningless.
Remember what's his face saying the actor he wanted to work with the most?
Still truly my favorite actor trolling. Just really, really incredible. Really beautiful. So I don't know. Hopefully we'll find out next week.
Anything else about Sylvie? I feel like she, like in the first half with we talked about like the first bit with Renslayer and how that was kind of out of character for her or whatnot. And then the second half, it's kind of the Loki stuff. But I really like that she stepped in and she continues to be the Loki with the plan. And that's like the moment that she steps in and she's like, okay, stabbing it is stupid.
Yes.
Like that whole thing, that felt real to character. And it also was like a good, like, I don't know, it highlighted what Loki had been saying all along. Like, no, she's the special one. Like this girl's going places. So the fact that she steps in and she's immediately like, no, guys, I have an actual plan. Loved it.
Yes. Yeah. And even that scene with Renslayer, like the degree to which that was, out of character and whatever, like mostly that scene just was that way because there was information that she needed to get and they did not want to spend, didn't want to drag it out over many back and forth interrogation-y, whatever. It was just like, Sylvie needs to know this thing about the void and the way the timeline works. We need to tell Sylvie how the timeline works so that she can go off and like do her thing. And that was like the most efficient way they could give her that information. So it's like, I don't know, it's fine. It could have been neater, cleaner, better, but
easier too. You literally just hold her at, whatever prune point and she confesses and then guards show up. You don't even need anything else. Like, so.
Yeah. Yes, she is a Loki who survived the TVA the longest, so it makes sense that she's the most competent. Yes, correct. I mean, she was a child when she ran away from the TVA, and as a child figured out how to hide from them. Like, obviously, she's the smartest and most competent one. Like,
yes. It's like classic Loki being super, super powerful because he's, older. And he's had more time to develop his powers or whatnot. I loved seeing that. So,
yeah, he was hanging out alone on some planet for decades. However long it took him to get from 35-year-old Tom Hiddleston to I don't know, however old Tom Hiddleston would have been when they shot Avengers the 3, but a lot of years all alone on that planet. So a lot of time to, I guess, conjure things with his magic.
I also find this hilarious. As I had a moment while I was watching that I kind of lost track of what even Sylvie was holding. And there was a moment we were just seeing the pokey side. And I was like, how'd she end up with a pokey tool? But then she switches it on. And I was like, oh, Oh, it has a pokey side, like a musket. Like you either shoot or you stab.
They do
Okay.
mention vampires, like in the first episode. There's like
They
a
do.
casual. So yeah, that's
Vampires confirmed in the
uh
MCU.
huh. So anyway, okay, what next?
Loki's. I think we talked about all the other characters. So we
Hmm.
move on to Loki's and then big MCU stuff.
Okay.
Loki's. I don't know, do we go through all the Loki's? Do you want to pick a favorite Loki?
Ooh, who's your favorite Loki? Yeah. I mean, okay. Alligator Loki is the easy answer, but classic Loki.
Classic
I gotta go
Loki.
classic
Yes,
Loki.
same.
I like his sad little story about
Yep.
how his death, the death that we all saw was just a projection or whatever in his timeline is just a projection, and then he like went to just go like remove himself. Like I just and that story is also essential to the point that this whole show is making too, because like it's this thing of like he's like I like people die and there's all of this destruction and like all of this shit happens everywhere that I go, so I am just going to remove myself from the equation and like that whatever yeah, like and then he conjured Asgard. Like
Yes.
I just come on, classic Loki.
I think too there is again like such a clever thing to do to win you over to Loki and to really cement that the TVA is the bad guy here is to make this point that almost like Loki's can't be great, because the moment that they start trying to change or whatnot, they're kind of they're pruned, right? They're taken out, their timelines are removed. So you have this Loki like taking himself out of the equation, and the moment he thinks, okay, like no, I miss my brother, I gotta go back, here comes the TVA. So putting all of that, like not all of it, but a big portion of like the Loki blame on the TVA and be like, I can't even be great if I wanted to. Like,
Yeah.
okay, good point.
And there's also like little hints. This is like less a thing that the show is doing and more, I don't know, this is like maybe me projecting stuff onto it. But I think that there is also something like there's definitely something a little bit meta going on in terms of the way that it's sort of like commenting on like Loki as a narrative tool, because like he has never been the main character before this show, and so like he exists to move Thor's plot along. And I am watching the fucking movies again with my mom, because my mom, whatever I'm watching the movies with my mom. We're going fairly slow, but when I was rewatching the first Thor, it was like it's like really apparent how like Thor's big like his sort of big moments, his like coming into being a hero and like being worthy of the hammer is contingent on several shitty things that Loki does. Like it doesn't happen without like like his scramble to get back to Asgard. He wouldn't have like given up on that and like accepted being on Earth if Loki hadn't come to tell him he wasn't allowed home, like all of that. And so like watching that while we're watching the show, I think is also sort of interesting. With all of the things that the show is saying about like the ways in which people change and like how their ability to change and their opportunities to change, this sort of like this very clear reminder of the fact that he is never the main character, and like he is always a character who exists to drive other characters along. And so like yeah.
And they told us really early on when Loki was like the Avengers time travel that like no, okay, but that was pre-approved that was the approved timeline, that was the approved story by the TVAs, that the Avengers get to do that. So in the pre-approved story, Loki is a bad guy, right? And that doesn't really take into account all of the things that we've also seen about Loki's character, that he is given to these things, like he is mischievous and he's going to double cross you, and he's like, all of that remains true, but it doesn't take away from the fact that even given the opportunity, he can't, because that is not on the pre-approved timeline. This is the story that the TVA has written about Loki, and so he is on that path, and that's it. So again, if you're gonna make me care about this dang character, telling me that he can't get out of this pre-approved story is like one way for me to be like, okay, you got me.
Yeah, that is also something that I really appreciate about this show in general, is like the way in which it is riffing on a lot of just like bigger things in comics, and this idea of here are the different iterations of Loki, and like they're all like references to iterations of this character on the page as well. I think the way in which this show is also incorporating elements of storytelling commentary, it's like itself.
Yes.
Of course, I'm into it.
Apart from classic Loki, who was my favorite, all of his moments were great. And when even though he went out kind of laughing at the end, it was so, I don't know, it still got to me that he sacrificed himself in that moment.
Well, and the fact that he goes out, like, that's part of why it was so heartbreaking, right? Is because he's it was knowing, it was intentional, and it was just like, I feel like laughing and shouting, glorious purpose.
Yes. and displaying this incredible display of power at that point, was just, all of it worked really well together. But I also liked that of all of the fates of the Loki, we just have Kid Loki like, bye, I'm gonna go survive for Young Avengers. Okay, bye, Kid Loki. Maybe see you later.
Yeah, the way that all of the Void Lokis have their little moment of like, no, we just live here now. We just go here now. Is amusing, because again, it's this thing of like, okay, they go here now. So the stories, the other MCU stories can maybe pluck them out of the void at any time.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes. And this is like the big thing, like, I know I'm kind of jumping ahead unless there's like more Loki talk, but the big thing that like struck me, the MCU thing about this all, is like how wonderful a multiverse is to pluck stories from, because we have all of these Lokis talking about their own stories. And so you have boastful Loki or talking about like his versions of Captain America. So they're like other, so you start thinking, oh, there are other Captain Americas out there. Somebody had mentioned we even saw like Frog Thor in one like brief scene there. So like there are all of these other potential storylines out there. So I've always thought about how the MCU is going to pass the baton with new characters. So we saw that like with Cap's friends, how that now we have a new Captain America, but they also have the potential to just bring back characters we already know, heroes we already know, but from other timelines, to recast these heroes and be like, here's Captain America from this other timeline or whatnot. Like, that's amazing. It's so much potential now of like all the different things that you can do with the timelines and cross them, which makes the fact that this is an actual series and not just a mini series really interesting. Like, what are they going to do in season 2? I don't know, but they can do so freaking much. You have this entire playground to like, choose from, and you don't even have to follow main character Loki that we're following now down the line. Like, you could just pick any other Loki and like follow that person for a while. So I love it. I love it so much.
Yes. Also extremely, extremely excited, extremely here for it. And like also just to see how, it will be really interesting to see if and how this like sort of segues into other stuff that is coming elsewhere. I think something that I have appreciated is that they have done a good job of making these things so far feel still like their own entities. I mean, even Cap's friends, which like I didn't like it, but it still functions as its own long movie.
Right.
You know, that like it's not. Yeah, I appreciate that, and so will be curious to see how the finale like factors into that. Yes, but
Okay, also in a lot of like seeing other people's reactions to this, I saw a couple of people like, in articles and things like that saying that the finales for WandaVision and for Falcon and the Winter Soldier were letdowns. And so they're like, hesitant to go into this finale, which also has a lot of work to do. And I was like, as another thing that I was kind of taken aback by, because I did not think WandaVision's finale was a letdown at all. So I was like, did we watch the same finale? Because I think that delivered beautifully, and it did have a lot to do. So that seems to be like something about these shows, is that it's like a ton of buildup, and it's leaving these last episodes to do most, if not all, of the plot resolution. And there are a lot of like, threads hanging open, a lot of questions, even outside of WandaVision, which had clear like mystery things and was obviously like misdirecting us in different ways. But in these other shows, there are a lot of questions that we're asking ourselves that we're not going to get answered until the last episode. So for better or for worse, that's kind of like the structure that they've set up. I think WandaVision delivered though, and I'm hopeful about Loki. Yeah. We're not going to talk about Cap's friends.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, just based on the like episode to episode, it's like I feel like you have had the really decidedly the inverse experience of the one that you had on Cap's Friends, where like coming into a lot of it, there was a lot of like, yeah, I liked this. And then like realizing that like, no, you didn't. Whereas this, you're like, oh my God, I like this.
Correct.
So,
yes.
That gives me reason to hope. To the point about like the finales, I think people want them to be game changing for the MCU as a whole, but it really doesn't make sense to do that, because any huge things they intro in these shows will have to be re-introed in a movie. Yeah, totally. Yes. Like that's the thing. Like that you can't. I mean, this is true of all of the movies too. That like there's a level of, you pick like one or two essential details from a movie that you can introduce in a line, if you sort of, as you're like going down the line of the movies, right? But otherwise you can't, you really can't assume that the audience has seen all of the things. That's not, especially at this point, it's not like actually reasonable. Yeah.
You've got to tell complete stories, and that's true of any, like you said, any singular movie in the MCU. Like even if like you're pulling outside knowledge, that movie still has to have a beginning, middle, and end. It has to function as a movie and as a story. And so these seasons of TV also have to function that way. They have to be contained in some way. And I think even more so that they're being contained by the MCU, because they don't want them to be necessary viewing and disturb what they've got going on with the movies. Like that's already a winning thing that they've got going on. And like cool that we've got this bonus thing for those of us who are choosing to partake, but there's a wider, I think, movie audience that they don't want to disturb that experience, and I totally get that. And I think they're doing a good job making sure that we're getting these like contained stories that are really interesting and connected to the MCU in really interesting ways. But if you skipped out on it, like you'll be fine.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, even like thinking about like even thinking about Cap's friends, right? Like the most significant thing is that the next time Sam appears, he will be Captain America, and like that made sense in the confines of the movies. Like,
yes,
Steve handed him the shield.
You're Captain America now.
So like, there's no explanation needed. Like, Avengers 5, like whatever. Like, cool, I get it. He's Captain America now.
All you literally need is a line from Sam being like, ever since I took the shield 3 months ago, things have been hard. And wow, now you're caught up.
Right, I get it. I understand what's going on now. Yes, yeah. Okay, well.
Anything else? anything else from the comments, Steve? You guys have any other
Yeah.
final observations or questions? It sounds like a lot of you guys are enjoying it as well, which is great. The vibe is different from when we were watching Cap's Friends. The struggle.
Very, very different energy. And I love that for all of us. Love that we're all having a better time. We're less upset, feeling generally less betrayed and sad. So, you know. Yeah. I don't know. I am excited, and I'm excited about the finale. I think like I am really genuinely enjoying the stuff that they're doing with this character and like the identity questions that they're working through here. I am deeply disappointed by their handling of Loki's general queerness. Like that is fucking annoying, and I'll probably yell about it a little bit more next week when they inevitably, continue to let me down.
Sure.
But otherwise, I'm genuinely really enjoying like what they are doing with this character here. Also, deeply hoping they go a non-romantic direction for the sake of the vibes in the chat.
Correct. I've said a couple things that will absolutely ruin this for me in the end. So, like, it's all good vibes right now, but they've got opportunity to mess this up for me.
I take this to mean that you did not watch Cap's Friends, and I love that for you.
The best decision is just skipping over Cap. Yes,
you did great. You did.
We caught you up to Sam is now Captain America at the end.
And that's what you missed on Glee. So yeah, the time cops will not allow good vibes. Tragically. Will we be doing Hawkeye? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure because I know how much. Like, this is the thing. You also deeply. I mean, we both deeply hate. Hawkeye.
That was like a later development. I did not like Loki from Go. Right. I mean, because he's a villain. It's I'm not meant to like him. But Hawkeye had just like really bad plot development or character development towards the end. But I still, in theory, like the character. But also like it's the MCU, and like we're so deep in this.
We're in too deep now.
Yeah.
But also Haley Steinfeld. I'm excited. Like that. That's the baton. The baton pass in this is something that I'm like deeply excited about too, especially because it's like we don't have, like the issue with Clint is like later things in like where they ultimately went, and so it's just like hit say okay, he's done now, Haley Steinfeld can take over, and that's the end of it. I haven't seen Black Widow yet, so
I haven't either. No. I will watch it this week probably.
At some point, we're recording a podcast episode about it next weekend. So at some point in the next 8 days, I have to watch that movie.
Watch that. I was going to say, I will not say that we started this project because of the pandemic, but it was highly influenced by the fact that we have nowhere to go. We were stuck inside. This is a way for us to like catch up and do a content during a time we're still during a time where we're not consistently doing the contents or whatnot. But I don't know. We will continue to do this thing. I don't know. Like people are going to get their Friday nights back and like go do other stuff. So will people be watching with us? Who knows? Will this like morph to be a weekday sort of thing? I don't know, but I think it's safe to say that we will continue to be watching the MCU stuff this way because like I said, we're in the MCU stuff, and like I really enjoy doing this, and it's great to see you, Nicole, every week and talk about a TV thing. So
yeah. I mean, also like now that I have moved back to my parents' house, like there's a level of like I will only have a social life when I am able to get on a plane. Like my life here in this house, like even if we're like, we did it, everybody's vaccinated, would honestly not be meaningfully different than it has been.
Okay, your question's answered here. We will continue to socialize right here
right here.
every
So,
week.
nothing's changing for me. Okay, well, I guess
And
we'll
on
see
that
y'all next
note,
week. And on that note, that brings us to the end of this live stream. If you are enjoying this live stream, subscribe, like, comment, come back next week.